ideas, cognition, cognitive schema, how to look at the societies outside, the others, and himself. So the personality also is the emotional response basis. He's decided how the people respond to the stress. So the personality is another important factor. The third is the family. Family could be very supportive, unite, intimate, but also could be very conflict, very dangerous. It's not good for health. Maybe it's a disaster for the health. Yesterday we meet another patient. That patient is a very successful man, 40 years. He is very rich, very successful for his enterprise. But his family, his fathers, hope he can support his brothers, young sisters, a lot of families. He has over responsible for the family, but he cannot refuse. He do not great contribution to the families, brothers and sisters. But the other family think you should have responsibility because you are successful, you are very rich. You should pay more for your parents, brothers, sisters. So he spent a lot of responsibility, his mornings, but 5 years later, he get a diabetes, hypertension, and depression. He has sleeping problems, poor appetite, weight loss. This is a family's problem. Argue and conflict with the brothers, sisters, because it's different development for each brother and sisters. So in the traditional Chinese cultures, the parents always hope the good brothers should help the young brothers. They are not enough stronger. You should support them. This is the family's inner family's problem. The third is the cultural background. Cultural background. Cultural background. It means cultures usually is a person group up in a particular cultures. This culture has their own rules, ethic, and some morals. It makes people must follow culture's custom to behavior. So this could be psychological factors. This is sure the social stress, the wars, the social disasters, catastrophes, make everyone get the stress. So especially the young children, teenagers, they lost their family, they lost the opportunity to schools, they cannot get good group of environment. This is the trauma. You hear about the traumas. The traumas during the childhood or teenagers is very important to affect the adult, the health and the mental health. So this could be the personal, family, community, social stress. It's a different level. Do you understand? Also, it could be the urban areas. Urban areas, particular areas, maybe the red light areas. People spend a lot of time to drink alcohol, maybe some drugs abuse, addiction behaviors. In our emergency department, usually have some patients play in some bar, take some stimulants, some substance, psycho substance, stimulants. Maybe people very exciting, happy, dance, and make people psychological change. There's a drug abuse, addiction problems. So his health is very dangerous because it's a social problem. The people have the dysfunctional behaviors to how to get the drugs, how to the relaxation, but it's not good for health. A lot of smoking, drinking. This is herbals. personal relationships, do you think is very important for personal health? Each one need unite with the others. It's deep united, not only the surface. Each one, his mind, need to unite the others. Very close relationships, intimate. They can get the emotional support, understanding, make people have the emotional support. You can talk anything he wants. He needs someone to hearing about his feelings, emotions. So marriage, very good love relationships is very good to have, is very important for person. So we meet some patients, they're very sad. No families, no marriages, very loneliness, no social support system. So he may feel the learning and the drugs, alcohol. So the personal relationship from the very younger children until the adults, even the elderly people need the very good relationship, especially the love relationship. So especially the adults, if have not good, stable, long-term love relationship, maybe his health is not good. He must find many different ways to overwhelm his longing, his sad, his anxiety, unsafe. So this is the psychological variables. The relation. Doctor need to know what your patient, how they live, what the relationship the patient with his others and his families. This is very important too. So this is the psychological factors. B. Dimension of the medical psychology include what is dimension of the medical psychology? What is covered? What kind of the interdiscipline? The dimension of the medical psychology includes biologic psychology, sociology, basis of the psychological behavior. Medical psychology also includes the meaning of psychology and behavior in health and disease. The other also includes the mechanisms of the interaction between body and mind. Human being is an integrate body and mind, biology and psychology and spirituality. So psychological, medical psychology will focus on these areas. How to interaction the person's biological bodies and his mind, his psychological. How the human's behaviors, psychology affect his health state. The role of the psychological variables in the process of disease diagnosis, treatment, and rehabilitation. Disease is a process. They have different stage. In a different stage of disease, maybe have different psychological problems. Doctor need to understand the patient with a different stage of the illness or disease. In emergency, in hospitalizations, before the operation, or the rehabilitation process after discharge from hospital. So we study the change of psychological and behavior and the way to treat, to manage the medical disease. Doctor need to find integrated way to manage the patient's disease. with the development of the societies and the industrializations, more and more people get high stress, very quickly lifestyles, very serious competition of occupations. So people almost meet many different problems. The people how to deal with his outside environment and the inside environment, how to satisfy his personal demands, and also have a good adaptation to the society. So have questions about this? No? The field relates to medical psychology. We talk about the medical psychology is include many different science discipline. So it is an interdiscipline of the different science. One of them is the neuropsychology. So medical psychology covers the different areas. They relate to medicine. What is the neuropsychological? This is a research relationship between the brain and psychology. Neuropsychology is how to find the brain structures, how to function. Different areas of brains have different functions. What kind of psychological function? His anatomy basis of brain, such as the frontal, temporal, different areas. So the location of brain function and the area of the specific psychological functions. Neuropsychologists usually use some specific research method, such as neuropsychological assessment test to find some particular brain areas, its functions, and very sensitively to find some dysfunction of central nervous system. We look at these pictures. This is the cortex of the brain evolution. The very lower is the rat. The rat. If the cortex flattened, the human cortex could cover about the 4 pages of the book, the top of the picture. The 4 page, the cortex of the human being, brain. The second, chimpanzee. Chimpanzee is able to cover 1 page. The flattened cortex is 1 page. The third is the monkeys, postcord, and the rat. Well, the rat's cortex is postage steps, only steps. So the brain cortex evolution a long time. The human being has a huge neural cells, neurons. Particularly in the cortex, it has a lot of function related to the human being. Language, cognition, executive functions, or is related to the cortex. Neuropsychologists try to find the different area of the cortex, maybe relate particular function. Do you hear about the dementia? Alzheimer's disease is the disease dementia in the elderly people. The patients gradually lost memory, disorientation, can't find the way to the home, and his emotion gradually become fat. He lost the emotional communication with families, and gradually the patient's thought disorganizes, personality changes, behavior become very regressive, angry, impulsions, and aggressive. So dementia is a degeneration disease of brains for with the particular aged people. The more elderly the people, the risk increased. The risk of the dementia is increased. But now, research shows Alzheimer's disease, the dementias, genetic problem. It could be a very important etiology of the Alzheimer's disease. So this is a degeneration of the brain cortex, different areas, make the patient lost a lot of normal neural functions. This picture shows the frontal lobes, parietal lobes, temporal lobes, and occipital lobes. The basic subdivision of the cortex. Maybe you know a lot of the basic anatomy of brains, but we know this all is very important for the personal normal function of the psychology, behaviors. If someone get an accident, maybe his frontal cortex is damaged. Even the biological, his life is saved after the operation of brain. He lives, but he may lost some important psychological functions. He may have the hepatitis, maybe have the personality changes, members disorders, and some others mental disorders. If have some damage of the brains after accident. So this neuropsychology is focused on the specific area of the brains, his functions, how they organize, different area, how to integrate to have the very complex function of psychology. Also, this is a picture about the brain structures, visual context, auditory context. Some patient has hallucinations, hear some voice, see some hallucinations, maybe have some pathology of the particular organic disease of the brains, particular areas. This is the evolution of the different areas, motor. This is not good. Sensory areas, motor areas, and association areas. This is human nerves in some anatomy. So it's just to show you, this is the evolution. Human being, his like psychological functions very important for his health and disease. This is a long-term evolution. So why human being is very good about the languages, cognitions, and his good memories, and very high-level function of psychology. The character of cognitions. Neuropsychologists very focused on some particular character of cognitions. Conceptions, attentions, memories, thoughts, accusative functions. Everyone might be different because they have different genetical basis, different personality, cultural background. So the character of cognition, some of them could be affected by the genetical or the learning, education, culture. Some could be damaged by some disease. Do you hear about the depression? Patients with depression, when they get covered, usually have some cognitive dysfunctions. The patient feel it is very hard to remember. They're lower responding to stimulus. It's very hard to speak out. The language becomes very hard. So usually studies very hard if a patient get depressions, his cognitive functions. The schizophrenia patient, this patient not only have some hallucinations, delusions, or disorganized thinkings, they also have cognitive function disorder. It's very hard to pay attention. Schizophrenia patients usually pay attention to some very detailed, very limited areas. He cannot organize the outside. He cannot catch the very important message. He usually misses the very significant message, but focus on the very details, insignificant area information. This is why schizophrenia is very sensitive to some others and look at him, talk something, relate him. Maybe some information is not related patient, but I think have some specific meanings for him. Maybe it's dangerous, or maybe sign of the persecution or follows him. So this patient has attention, cognition problem. Memories usually in the organic brain disease, and thoughts, executive dysfunction. Executive functions. What is executive function? It means human being can think in problems, make plans, make decisions, and do and implicate his plans. So this is the executive. Some patients with schizophrenia, they have different symptoms. There are no hallucinations, no illusions and delusions. They just seems very pass, very spend a lot of time on the bed, no any ideas, very poor emotion response, and no aim, no objective to do. So this patient is very hard to communication with others. It's very hard to establish the relationship with the outside. Very lonely, hard to talking and communication. So executive function is disorder. Clinical psychology. We talk about the neuropsychology. The second area of the medical psychology covers the clinical psychology. Clinical psychology includes two main areas. One is the psychological assessment. What is psychological assessment? The psychologists develop some specific skills to assess the patient's psychological varieties, such as personality, IQ, emotional, memories, or psychological assessment. So psychologist part of work is to research how to measure the patient's psychological variables, how his emotional levels, how about his IQs, his cognitive functions, how about his personality. Psychological varieties is very hard to objectively measurement. Do you think that? Well, it's very hard. It don't like some biological index, brothers test some heart disease. There is no objective method to keep the measure very objectively. But the psychological variables could be assessment by particular scales. To hear about some particular scales to test the human personality. MMPI means Minnesota Multiple Personality Inventory. Minnesota is the name of the state of the United States. This is a multiple personality. It's a personality assessment involves the assessment of multiple areas of the personality and integrate them to research and assessment about the person. How about the personality? Maybe he's very external, internal, nervous, psychosis, sensitive. We have a lot of character of a personality could be assessment by psychologists. If you call another personality scales is the Erickson Personality Questionnaire. EPICO. These scales cover the 4 dimensions. Nervous, this is sensitive, very easy to anxiety. Another is the psychosis character, external and internal characters. So, clinical psychologists, one of them is assessment. If you're very interested in these areas, you have the further opportunity to development in these areas. You can develop more skills to help find the patient's psychological variables, such as how to evaluate the patient's mental health state. We have some another skills to help the doctor to assess the patient's mental health state, psychological problem, emotional problem. So this is a clinical counseling or consultation. Clinical psychologists accept the psychological assessment. The other is the counseling and the psychotherapy. We need the clinical psychologist. But in our training course, we have the specific course for the training of a clinical psychologist. So maybe the after medical training, the course, you need the further development in these areas. Psychological counselors help the patient to solve their problems in the working, interperson, relationships, stress coping, and adaptation. In the department of psychiatry, we have the particular training program for the counselor. Do you hear? Psychotherapy is a part of the treatment strategy. Some patients need psychotherapy because his health problem relates to some psychological problems, such as he maybe have some personality problems, relationship with others, very bad lifestyles or environment or stress. They need some psychotherapy. Psychotherapy has a different ways, different theory and different method. The common used in the clinical is cognitive behavior therapy and psychoanalysis. But psychoanalysis is not common in China because it takes a long time to training and learn and practice. So cognitive behavior therapy is more easily to operate in the clinical practice. So this is a clinical psychologist. So medical psychology, one of the branches of this field is the clinical psychology. Access of patient psychology, counseling, and psychotherapy. The patient might be cancer, might be heart disease, or maybe have some chronic disease. He must live with his chronic disease. He cannot get out of his very suffer disease. How to help the patient to live with his problems, with his disease, and how to help the patient to deal with his environment, life, and accept the change of his health, and change the patient's attitude, cognitions to coping his medical problems. The intervention of crisis, psychological crisis, is very emergent and very dangerous. Such as patients usually have some suicide, or very aggressive, or suicide. In emergency, some patients have the psychological crisis. The patient is suddenly lost the balance of his psychological areas, He may cannot control emotions. He may be very angry, very sad, very excited. He thinks he must immediately finish his life. It's very dangerous. So some patients take a lot of medicine. This is emergency, or some psychologists do some work in our department. Some graduates and doctors and the cooperation with the policemen to help the patient with the psychological crisis and prevent some very dangerous social problems, suicide, maybe phobias problems, such as that. Okay, we maybe have a 10 minutes break.